AFib, that's something that is kind of near and dear to my heart because I had AFib as well. I got diagnosed with it back in 2018, and I've been on the carnivore diet now for over a year and a half. I started in July of 2022, so I started like a year before you did.
Right.
So I'm over a year and a half, and maybe a little less than a month in is when I had my last um, episode of AFib. So it's been well, basically it has been a year and a half since, it's been over a year and a half since I've had that last episode, and I was having 2 to 3 episodes per week. I know yours was a little bit different. You were like kind of stuck in AFib there for a while and so forth. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that? How your experience was with that?
Well, having been a paramedic for so long, I've actually treated several hundred patients that were in AFib episodes that would call 911, obviously. As an emergency personnel, emergency room doctor, nurse, or paramedic, you see that a lot because I think it's a lot more prominent than people realize. But how it normally starts out, and this is how it started out for me, is I would have one episode, it'd last, just a few seconds, but I could feel something different in my chest. And being a paramedic, I would take my pulse and I would notice that it was irregular, because the hallmark of AFib is not a fast pulse or a slow pulse, it's irregular. And it's irregularly irregular. Like, for example, you can have an irregular pulse that's like doot, 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 doot. So it's irregular, but it's a pattern of irregularity. And AFib, it's all over the map. It could be really fast, it could be slow, it could skip 2 or 3 beats, it could be just anywhere. So being a paramedic, I knew what it was. And at the time, I was extremely unhealthy, as I've talked about, and I was drinking energy drinks because I wasn't sleeping because my having to get up and go to the bathroom, and my arthritis and my plantar fasciitis just hurt so bad it made it difficult to sleep. So I would use energy drinks to get me through the day. Well, so when I started having the AFib, I started cutting back on the energy drinks because I thought maybe that was, bringing it on. It could have had a part in it, but even when I completely stopped the energy drinks, those episodes got longer and more frequent, to where I was having one or two a day every day. But it
Mhm.
lasts a minute or two and it resolve and kind of go back to normal. And you can, you can kind of feel it in your chest. You can tell that something doesn't feel right, or you can hear it in your mind that your heart is not beating
Yeah.
the way it's supposed to. Well,
Yep.
they were getting more and more closer, and they were getting longer in duration. So being a paramedic, I knew that eventually it was going to go into AFib and not go out. Because it's called chronic recurring AFib. So I was driving a truck at the time. I was in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and I live in North Carolina. But I was on my way home to do my annual DOT physical so that I could maintain my commercial driver's license. And I went into AFib as I left Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And Iowa is a long way from North Carolina. And I kept holding my breath and doing all the little tricks that I've learned over the years. Nothing fixed it. It stayed in AFib, and my heart rate got faster and faster and faster. And it started getting hard to breathe. Well, this is still kind of during the pandemic, and my wife and I are empty nesters, so my wife is the only one at home. And I didn't want to end up in the hospital somewhere, way out in the Midwest, and my wife couldn't get to me. So I just kept going home. I just as fast as I could get there, safely and legally. I have to say that. But I finally made it home, went to the emergency room, and I'll be honest with you, Brian, walking from my pickup truck to the emergency room door was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I was about to pass out. I couldn't breathe, but I knew if I could make it to the door, somebody would see me and help me. So I got in, they got me fixed up, and they did what's called a cardioversion, where they basically put you to sleep and they stop your heart. And then the thought process, it'll go back to a normal rhythm. You just kind of have to stun it, stop it, and then it should go back to a normal rhythm. And it did, and it lasted exactly 1 week. I went back because I went into AFib again that would not resolve. They said, well, we're going to try it again. We'll do two. So they put me down, took me to sleep. Of course, we had to schedule all this, a few days in advance. And they shot me again, and it lasted a day. Well, then they decided to do an ablation. Well, I don't know about you, but when all this was going on, even though I knew what I knew about AFib from being a paramedic, I started searching every article, every piece of information I could about AFib, and the potential for it to be a bigger problem, the stroke risk, all the stuff that goes with that. So I had this ablation knowing that it's not a guarantee. Now, this ablation was they go in through your groin and they go up into your heart and they actually freeze part of your heart and it kills part of your heart. It literally kills the heart tissue. And the thought process, it'll settle down the rest of it because it kind of disrupts the electrical pathway. So part of my heart is dead and will never come back because I had to have that done. So I have the ablation done and they said, you may have to have this done again later. Well, when I started doing the research, once you have one ablation and then have maybe a second ablation, your life expectancy starts coming down dramatically because they're literally killing part of your heart. That's the only option that they will share with you. This is what we can do. Now they can put you on anti-arrhythmic medicines, which I was on, but they have some horrendous side effects, especially long term. So they felt like this was my best option to have the ablation. After the ablation, within about a month, I started having AFib again. I'm like, I've been through 2 cardioversions. I've had this $250,000 surgery, the ablation, where they've killed part of my heart, and I'm having AFib again. No coffee, no energy drinks, but I'm still very unhealthy. So when I started doing carnivore, and because I didn't have it all the time, it was just sporadically I'd have it after the ablation. Well, one day, maybe a couple months in, I said, I haven't had AFib in a while, not a single episode. And then I found your channel, and you and I conversed a little bit back and forth, especially when your doctor took you off your meds. I think I sent you a text and told you that it literally brought tears in my eyes because I knew what I'd been through, and knowing that you were able to use just changing your eating to correct the things that I ended up having surgery for was amazing. So I'm 7 months in now, not a single AFib episode. I just wish
That's
that,
awesome.
you know, hindsight's a perfect 2020 and you can't go back, but I wish at 51 or 52 years old, I would have known about the carnivore diet, the carnivore way of eating, or just really low carb, clean eating. Um, I don't think I would have gone through all the trials and tribulations that I went through with my heart had I known about this sooner. But thank God I found it now.
Hmm. Yeah. I tell you that I wish I would have known about this when I was 20.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, man. I tell you, that's awesome, though. 7 months without an episode. And, when I had it, so I did have to have the cardio version one time. There was one
right.
time that I went in it and I just didn't go out of it, and they scheduled me the next day to have it done. So I did have that done one time. I never got to the point of doing an ablation, but they did talk about it a little bit. But what really gets me is they don't really talk to you about your diet with it, and I mean, like my cardiologist basically was like, my dad had it, right? So he's like, your dad had it's hereditary, and it's probably just going to get worse, and it was getting worse over time. Um, but where I kind of found a little bit about it was on YouTube. I found a cardiologist out of the UK, I believe, that was
Mhm.
talking about diet and helping with AFib. And in his particular case, he, had like a program that he wanted you to go through. So I didn't go into that, but I kind of got some information from him and realized that he was basically cutting out like processed foods and sugars and stuff like that, right?
Yeah,
And then from just watching Dr. Barry's videos and um Bart K, Dr. Baker, Dr. Chafee, and so forth, I knew that carnivore was the way that I wanted to go. I think Dr. Barry had a video where he talked about um, how insulin resistance can lead to issues with AFib. So that's kind of how I got into going into the carnivore diet with it, and it's been a godsend for me. And it's just amazing that they don't talk to you about the nutritional side of things. And I understand that maybe it's not gonna help everybody that has AFib, but there's a lot of people that I've talked to that has AFib and they've either improved it or they haven't had an episode for months and months by going on the carnivore diet. There's something there to that.